Hello, everyone. Welcome to International Women's Day 2024, presented by GDG Los Angeles, GDG Culver City, GDG San Fernando Valley, and a whole bunch of other Google student groups, as well as our Women Tech Makers and Women Tech Makers ambassadors in the local area. We are very, very glad that you have joined us today. We have an excellent slate of panelists and women in AI who are going to speak to you today about some very emerging technologies and topics that we hope you will find very interesting. So, we have a couple of housekeeping announcements. Our code of conduct is posted, but just in case you're not familiar with it, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, so speed read through this for a second while I vamp. The bathrooms are out there to the right, because I know my directions. And there is food out there too, so if you get peckish, go ahead and grab yourself a plate, but we'll have time at the end for more food and networking. So this is more code of conduct stuff. Everybody just be nice. If you see anything, say something. We do not tolerate harassment, and let us know. Organizers, raise your hands if anything is untoward. Thank you. This is our agenda. We will have an introduction about women tech makers from our friend Kubra, the panel, talk on UX design by Ariana, and then AI's impact to the future of work by Jane Yang from Aspecta. And then after that, like I said, networking and some food. We will also have prizes, so while you're watching the speakers, think about how much they are engaging you and how relevant the content is, because those are the questions on the feedback survey, and answering the feedback survey will get you entered into the drawing for the prizes. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our friend Kubra Stengen, who's going to talk about the Women Tech Makers program.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Welcome. So my name is Kubra. I'm the regional lead for Google Developer Groups and also Women Tech Makers program here at Google. And I'm leading the North America communities. And I would like to just talk about, the Women Tech Makers program. So this program actually started actually more than 10 years ago. And I was a part of it too, back in time in Istanbul. And now I'm kind of leading it for a bit longer. So so Women Tech Makers program is designed to empower women in tech around the globe, and then, kind of create that, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit excited today. So just create visibility and, provide resources for women in tech. And we try to have some initiatives around the Women Tech Makers program. For example, we have the membership. So if you go to the website, you will see the membership link to be a part of the membership. You will get monthly newsletters through the membership program. We will have a lot of perks and benefits for your own service. So that way you can, participate in these type of events, or maybe find, your local area different initiatives. This is one, I will say. The other one is, it's just free, by the way. You don't have to do anything for becoming a member. And for ambassadors, we have ambassadors here who are, let's see, Marsha is one, Emily is one. So those are the ones who are, empowering women here. So through their local, meetups. So that program is still under the website, and you can apply through June 30th. So we still have the application open. So if you want to be a part of the ambassadorship program, just go to the website and click that form. So for ambassadors, I want to say this. You are expected to organize some meetups, or maybe you want to just mentor others, or you want to create blog posts or YouTube content somewhere. So those are the expectations that you can just, create impact in your local areas, in your cities. And that way, just you help other women in tech. So that's how it is. this for ambassadorship. And we have other ones like scholarship and different, types of programs. We create like some stories from you all, just collecting them, and then, like feature you on Google blog posts or some social media channels. So that way you can even, like tell your stories, just create those voices from your own, members. So that way it's just, creating that like level of snowball effect, to reach out to more women in tech. So that's how it is for the program. And I would like to, thank the organizers of this event. We are actually now, creating this impact. Like we had the theme around the International Women's Day this year, Impact the Future. So I love how we are, just creating this impact and also, like affecting the future. So thanks for being here. And hope you enjoy the day. And if you want to reach out to me, you can add me on LinkedIn. My name is Kubra Zengin, and just you can find me throughout the day. And I can share my email if you want to just talk about like Women Tech Makers program or Google Developer Groups program or any other programs that we have at Google. We have other ones for developer communities, and we have an upcoming actually like event. Google I/O is coming up, so you can just even learn more about like those type of signature events from me. So that's all I will say. And once again, welcome, and good to see you all.
Come. Let's come to the stage, everyone. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Sienna Aguayo. I'm one of the organizers of this event representing GDG LA Android. I am a staff Android engineer at a local startup called Tapcart. If you're into Android development either professionally or you'd like to be, please come talk to me. It's my passion, as one might say. I am lucky enough to be introducing our panel today about impacting the future, women leading in AI. Moderating today, we have Michelle Brenner, senior software engineer at Netflix. Next, we have Aksa Fulara, product manager at Google. Naila Khan, software engineering manager at Google. Laura Kanchan, AI ML customer engineer, again at Google. Liz Rothman, attorney and advisor, xrsi.org. And Sarah Asmaro, account executive at Google. So without further ado, please take it away.
Thank you. So as she mentioned, I'm a senior software engineer. I'm also a public speaker. But what I am not is an AI expert. What I am an expert in is knowing what to put on your resume at any given time. And right now, that's AI. So part of my personal goal for this panel is to get everyone here a little more comfortable with both adding AI into their life and their job, and also understanding what it is and what opportunities are out there to build companies, to be a part of the movement, and to just get excited about it. So without further ado, we have a very diverse panel of AI expertise here. So with the first question, I'd love to hear from everyone and get a little intro, and then with the rest, everyone can just, speak up as they feel moved. So if you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your work with AI and why you decided to join the panel today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everyone. My name is Aksa Fulara. I'm a product manager. And what I do here at Google is I help build products that take the best of AI and the best of tech to solve business problems. And my expertise over the last 7 to 8 years has been in across different areas. In Google Assistant, I worked on conversational AI. In cloud, I worked on recommendations, AI, and data analytics products like dashboards. And right now, I'm in ads where I work on measurement. And one of the reasons why I joined this panel is even after working on so many years on AI, I don't think I'm an expert either. But I do want to, there's two things. I do want to share my learnings and hopefully inspire the women and everyone here in the room. So that's one. Second, I do think representation and visibility matters, especially for the young women here, especially from the minority backgrounds. Having examples in front of you that you also can be successful, you also can be on the cutting edge of technology at the best of AI. I want to share like examples that you can be here, and so I think that representation matters a lot, and that's why I'm excited to be here on the panel.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I just want to say I am so excited and thrilled to be here today. I've been always fascinated with how much innovation is happening in AI and the impact that it has on our society and our economy. And I think diversity plays a huge role in it. So with my passion combining AI with diversity and really supporting women in tech in general, I got super thrilled and excited to be part of this because I think this is an exciting opportunity, a perfect blend of both. So I'm here today to share my experience and learn new things from all of you who share a similar passion. A little bit about myself. I am an engineering manager at Google. I lead a team that enhances customer support for Google. So if you've had any issues, please do not contact me. But how do we do it? So we do it by building AI products that enable our agents to provide customer insights and issue insights and help and resolve customer issues in a timely fashion and very accurately. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. I am so excited to be up here with everyone. This is great. And thank you everyone for being here. I'm Lauren Conchin. I'm a customer engineer. And I've also been working really closely in the product team on our text-to-speech API and working with speech modeling, which is a really interesting AI subject right now on realistic voices. And so I think what I'm excited to talk about today with you is how we all have our own voice in the engineering space and how to kind of, even if we're not in a management position and we're not a leader in our role and title, we still have that voice, and we're talking about how this AI affects us personally and how it will affect our customers. So just want everyone to feel like you have that voice and chiming in on Zoom, whether you're raising your hand or just interrupting in those remote meetings. Yeah, a little bit about me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Rothman. I'm an attorney and advisor, and I'll go over a little bit of what I do, although it spans quite a big breadth of area. But I just want to say that this is such a fast evolving and moving field that nobody should feel like they're behind. It's one of the places where if you are interested, jump in, get in there, learn everything that you can, and that is how you'll get involved and ahead in this field. And everybody has something to contribute here. AI will touch pretty much every area of our society and globally. And so I think it is, no matter what you do and what areas you're in right now, just get interested, get involved, and you'll find your path. So I'm an attorney. I do a lot of work in the AI space. I also work with a nonprofit called XRSI, and we are a standards developing and research nonprofit developing privacy and safety standards, and also working on accessibility in technology. So accessibility in technological accessibility, just having access to new technologies, and then also inclusion and diversity initiatives as well. In addition to that, I do a lot of work with AI-generated output and intellectual property, so on the copyright and patent side. And then I'm also currently editing the AI and the Law Encyclopedia for Edward Elgar, which has been a very exciting and interesting project, and really expanded my horizons even of all of the areas that AI will touch in the future. So I'm super excited to be here and hopefully add a little bit of perspective from my background into this panel. And excited to be here with all the Googlers on the panel as well.
Awesome. I will close this out. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. I serve as an account executive here at Google. And I also work direct with private equity firms as an advisor, both direct to client and direct to private equity. The conversation is how can we be leaning into AI to drive business growth? And the reason why I wanted to join this panel especially was I find it fascinating that if we think of any industrial revolution that's ever happened, when were women ever at the forefront hosting an event called Women in Anything, having these conversations so early on? So when we think about the conversation of equality or equity, this might be our opportunity to level the playing field a little bit. So I'm excited to be here with my fellow panelists, and I'm excited to speak more with each of you.
Wow, there's so much expertise here. I feel like I could talk to each of you for hours, and you're all going to be in my next podcast. You volunteered, you didn't even know it. Let's start with, every day it seems like there's a new AI tool or product. How do you suggest people find the right ones for them that actually can work and enhance their lives?
I can kick us off. I think maybe the question, if we zoom out a little bit, is what problem are you looking to solve? And then when you find that problem that you're looking to solve, how can you scale it? So if you think about like, what can AI do for me? I'd actually look at the problem at hand and I'd say, if our focus is to be more efficient with AI, how can I drive efficiency in whatever it is that I'm doing? So I would almost work backwards a little bit. And I think a lot of the Google advertisers, a lot of the clients that I work with are asking the same question of like, what tool to plug in, as almost as though it's like a Chrome extension we plug in. But I encourage everybody to think a little bit bigger and take that zoomed out approach of saying like, okay, we know the capabilities, but what is it that we can be doing to drive more efficiency in terms of whatever it is that we're doing, and what problem is it that we're looking to solve, so we then be more efficient and work backwards.
I can add some perspective as well. So I'll admit that I'm a shopaholic. I love to shop, and when things go, in the next direction, that's where you'll find me in a mall. I like to think of this as if you're going to shop for a product or clothing. So in my mind, there's a 5-step process actually. You really start with what you need. So what is the problem you're trying to solve? For example, if let's say, cooking is not your passion and you want to optimize cooking, you think about, okay, what is the process in my workflow where I can optimize? Let's say get an air fryer. So that's how you start solving the problem and really thinking about what part of the problem can I operationalize or can I optimize. That'll help you at least find a goal. The second one would be really understanding the requirements. So think about the different brands that are available for an air fryer, right? How do you narrow down your search criteria? What are the things that are most important to you to solve that problem? When you think about AI tools, think about, if you're going for a tool, how are they planning to scale? What are the feature set of functionalities they're providing? How are they thinking about safety? Those are some of the things that you want to think about. The second one is really finding that intersection of your needs with the feature set that tool is providing. So thinking about, okay, in the next X number of years, will there be support for that? Are they really thinking about the goals that are important to you? Is this, should it be text-based solution or an image-based solution? So really narrowing down and thinking about the requirements that you need and if that tool is able to provide you that. The fourth one will be around pricing and deployment and the support of that tool. Does it fall in your budget? Oh, this is very, the air fryer is too pricey. I want to go for a short run. Or, this is the best brand. I trust this brand. I'm, willing to make that investment upfront. And the last one, don't shy away from trying it out. So experimentation is going to be one of the most important things. Most of these AI tools, they offer free trials. So just try it out, hands-on, see how it operates, see if it works for your process, and then that'll help you narrow down that decision.
I think to echo a little bit of what was just said around trying things out, experimenting, and making sure that, for me, the most important thing right now is kind of like playing and figuring out what these tools can actually do. So separating out the hype from what the reality is can be very important, because otherwise you may try some of these tools for your business. You may waste a lot of time doing that, decide none of them are actually what you need at this moment, and then decide that, AI is just not what I need in my business. But really, it's going to continue to evolve over the next many years, right? Things are moving quickly, but there's also an incredible amount of hype. And so separating out some of that and realizing what some of these tools may or may not be able to do for your business at this time, or for you personally for your own productivity, is really important to keep in mind as you start playing with these tools and researching them for your business. But I think, for me, the first part should be the experimenting. Let's see what this tool actually does, not what the marketing says that it does at the moment.
That actually segues perfectly into my next question, because I was going to talk about the gold rush aspect of AI, where the research of AI has been around for decades, but all of a sudden it's becoming incredibly popular as the tools become more democratized and we can all set up new companies whenever we want. So as creators and technologists and people who are looking for AI jobs, how do you determine if a company or their main product is viable and something that you think you should spend all your time working on?
I can kick us off. So I think I'm going to echo a couple themes that were there here. Is it doesn't start with AI. AI is not like a magical potion going to solve, bring like X number of like growth and bring efficiencies, but you have to start with your problem, what business problem you're trying to solve for. And instead of looking at where I can fit AI or insert AI in my workflows, start backwards where what are the top problems I'm going to try and solve this year? Is it growth? Is it efficiencies? And then when you narrow it down to those goals, what are the specific use cases for your business, for your specific teams? And then look at where AI fits in that. And so I think there's a couple themes. One is like from your personal workflows, you have to get comfortable with AI before recommending at a team level or your company or your objectives levels. And so for getting comfortable there, my sort of like one of the go-tos is reading more about that space in general. And what I have found beneficial is newsletters, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. Usually these land in your inboxes. I'm not like going to name names here, but I think there's plenty of newsletters. And that way you start getting comfortable, and these have like specific tools, whether that's note taking, whether that's getting video, you're in meetings and transcribing those videos to sort summaries. Those are some use cases. As you start getting comfortable with those in your everyday workflows, whether that's meetings that you attend, and then you sort of expand like what's going on in the space. Then when you try to bring it to your teams, that is when you look at, for those specific use cases, you're looking what's the products out there that Naila, you touched upon, like don't just look at what are the different range of the companies' offerings there, look at, sort of have your criteria in mind right from the get-go, so then you aren't sort of swimming in like an ocean of different options. Is a lot of buzzword right now, but go beyond the buzzword. And then third is like at the end, everything sort of comes down to like what's the business value, because quickly you'll find yourself at the end of this prototype, like in couple weeks, like where did we land? What were we trying to solve? Did we reach there? So I think those would be my, like starting from your personal workflows, getting more comfortable with that, then taking it to your team, then taking it to the companies you work for.
Well, I don't want to just do serious questions because I'm a very silly person. So I'm going to go with a silly question, which is, can you tell us about a time you either got a surprisingly good or surprisingly bad output from an AI tool? And if it was a joke, even better.
I think if anyone has Googled the SoundStorm demo from the AudioLM research team, I think that really blew me away. That allows people to generate conversation and hear audio that just sounds like two people maybe presenting a podcast or something. It sounds unbelievable. It always really freaks me out to hear it laughing, but kind of in a good way. But yeah, I think that's not really a great joke, but is something that certainly surprises me if you've heard it. Has anyone heard that demo before? Yeah. Good homework for everyone.
I can share an example. So recently I had to look at some data analysis. And this I'll be very specific here. It's a specific example I had to do. And I was like, okay, I have to like maybe spend 30, 40 minutes or like maybe an hour. And so I'll give you this example of what I did. I had 1,000 brands that I had to look at and map them to specific verticals. Now this original data already had the 1,000 brands and already had a mapping of the verticals. But then I had 12 standard verticals or segments and categories that I had to map them to. And so like I had to take this list of 1,000 brands which had its own sort of custom verticals and map to my standard list of verticals. I started doing that. I think by 5th or 6th, I was like, this is going to take me a long time. And I think that Gemini use case, like, okay, let me try giving this to Gemini. And I did that, and to my surprise, like that, it was a really good mapping in like, 2 or 3 different prompts, and in less than 5 minutes. Yes, I had to like check over, like a human glance is required. But what I was thinking, like easily allocate 30, 40 minutes, it was like under 10, 15 minutes, a done job. So I'm truly amazed by the power, and yeah.
That's a really fun one. Thanks for sharing that. I can share one too. It's not related to work, but I have twin girls, so they came very excited from their school, and they were like, "Oh, we talked about ChatGPT in school." I was like, "Okay, what do you think? Like, how was it?" No, Mama, I don't think it's good." I'm like, "Why?" They were like, we told ChatGPT, okay, I'm Naila Khan. I want to teach my team AI, so teach me. And then it said, who is Naila Khan or something like that. So they were completely bummed that apparently ChatGPT doesn't know me. But I thought that was hilarious, and a very good example of, sometimes we think of these as very powerful, and they are, there are so many domains where they're really useful. But when it comes to very specific and niche things, there is still a lot of work that we need to do in that space.
And I'll expand on that a little bit. One of the ways that, and this is an example of AI being very good and very bad intentionally at something or giving an output. So, a lot of the models are tuned to be kind of helpful assistants in a way, right? So ChatGPT, you're asking it a question and it's going to try to give you something that's not too crazy outside of the boundaries, or it's going to be, something that is reasonable for you, not hallucinating too much. But models can hallucinate a lot, and that can be actually very interesting to ask them to hallucinate in certain ways. So a lot of the work I do is kind of on the edge of different fields, and so sometimes I'll actually ask the model to turn up what's called the temperature, and then turn up the hallucination somewhat to come up with outside of the box ideas. And sometimes that goes horribly wrong, and sometimes it comes up with very interesting things. So one way to produce good and bad output at the same time.
Awesome. So one of the fears with any new technology is, oh no, we're all going to lose our jobs. This is all going to be able to do our work much better and easier than us. But I want to go in the more positive direction. What are some interesting or unusual jobs in AI that people should be thinking about training themselves up and getting involved in?
Everybody looks over. It's interesting. A lot of the skills that we've built, we'll say over the last 100 years, are what are dubbed as hard skills, right? So it's like the physical skills, the labor, long hours, etc. We all kind of know the drill. Versus if I think of how to operate a Gemini, it's how can you ask better questions so you can get a better output? Imagine if what we're tasking you with now in the next 5 to 10 years, as we just look at the short term of what AI could do for our businesses, is being more thoughtful in the questions that we're asking, in the hopes that it's going to give us an output that could be done all the quicker, all the more efficient than maybe what humans can do on their own. So the skill really that I think about now is it isn't necessarily how can I, roll my sleeves up. It's really how can I pause and be more mindful so that as I'm having a conversation with a Gemini, if I'm not getting the output that I want, all right, maybe I can be asking different questions or can ask the question in a different way. So I find that to be a really interesting skill that we all are going to have to lean back into. Again, it's soft skills, but think about what children do best, other than just the simple stuff. They ask why. They ask questions, and once they master that, they can get outputs quicker.
And I think that's so important. That we can look at that skill as being a way that humans can communicate better as well. One of the things that one of the areas that I'm very passionate about right now is how humans will utilize AI and how we will have this relationship together. But also, in order for humans to have a really symbiotic relationship with AI, we need to have better relationships with each other. And being able to really express yourself mostly in the English language is what we're talking about when we're talking to AI, right? And we have to communicate in various ways that might differ from the ways we would communicate with humans. But I do think that there's a lot of skills that can translate there that will improve our relationships as humans together and our ability to govern AI at the same time.
So one of the cool jobs that I have seen at Google recently is sort of this TPU and GPU architect role, where customers come to you with a really real world problem with, this is what kind of our model needs to be able to do. So maybe a Netflix example is the recommendations AI is kind of a good example, right? How do we provide people with the right suggestions and do that? And we want to build a model that's going to help us do that. We don't want a giant LLM that's going to cost us bazillions of dollars. We want somebody to help us really architect out how much GPU or TPU infrastructure we need to do that. And I think that's a really interesting role that I've seen, where you get to take the real world problem for customers or consumers and tie that into an affordable model. I think that's something that's kind of cool to look into as well.
I can add a little bit if we have time. So when I think about it, I know, the times are changing so much, and sometimes it can, cause a little bit of uncertainty, can cause a lot of stress. So I keep thinking about, okay, what are some of the skill sets that we can hone in and lean in on and build as, we see these advancements in AI. And I can, when I really think about it, it hasn't changed that much. If you see even before, you have to have a good blend of technical skills along with some soft skills. So, with technical skills, okay, what is the domain that you are in? What are some of the technical skills that you can build? If you are in AI, learn about prompt engineering, like Sarah was talking about. Or, if you like some domains that are a mix of AI and specific domains, for example, AI ethics is where some of the laws and policies come hand in hand with the technology. So, figure out what is your passion, how you can build that technical skill and be really good at it. The other aspect, which is more a skill that you can apply in any domain, are the soft skills. How do you navigate ambiguity? How do you, think critically? How can you be innovative to stay ahead of the curve? And, a lot of what has helped me in this space has been just understanding how the world around us is changing. What are some of the thinkers that I admire and leaders that I admire? How are they thinking about solving these problems? How are they thinking about innovation in the next 5 years? And that really helps me do that think big, where, I'm like, okay, maybe this is an interesting problem that I can solve. So having that good mix of technical skills along with soft skills on how you do problem solving, how do you resolve ambiguity, how do you critically think, how do you think big. I think those are, some of the things that can stay alive, even if, no matter how much this technology changes.
Awesome, thank you. So as a software engineer, as soon as I got a chatbot, I became completely dependent on it, and Stack Overflow is missing me very much. They're like, where have you gone? I know you have questions. And one of the things I used to have to do is remember the answers, but now I don't. So I ask the same question over and over again. But one of the downsides is I think about every once in a while is what impact am I having by being wasteful with the technology in terms of climate change and all that compute, and is one day this gonna all go away and maybe I shouldn't have used it to ask like how to make a list in Java 4 times and instead maybe like remembered it one of those times. So let's talk about the problems that we might see from all of that compute use and the relying on that, and what are your thoughts on the long term of that?
Well, I'll kick it off, but I think that the hope is that the compute power is going to accelerate so much that it's going to catch up with our usage. And I don't I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you if that's going to happen. But the reality is that there's a tremendous amount of compute, a tremendous environmental impact, a tremendous amount of cost that goes into running these models. And right now, they have some padding and funding from companies and venture capital and a lot of different places. And it's kind of it's unknown how fast all of these things are going to develop together and where as a society, our access to these models will really be in a couple of years. And so it's a good question, right? What we're using resources maybe not the most efficiently right now, but we're at this stage where, again, we're kind of playing and experimenting and figuring out how this fits into society, and we're going to see, how fast the compute power can, be generated and accelerate. But unfortunately, I don't have any really good answers there, except that I think that we should be more mindful of the cost of running these models and our current models of funding them. And if that all made a little bit more sense on a spreadsheet, I think then we would understand and know the sort of the power and the cost of these models more than we do right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think back to when I was in 5th grade, and I saved up all my neighborhood dog sitting money to buy a TV that was like this big with a VCR attached to it. And I think it was like $100 or something. But yes, I think with Moore's Law, we know that this is going to get cheaper. But for the time being, you do need to focus on your memory and kind of take a walk after you get that answer to let it sink in. And then, call up a GPU architect to help you kind of reduce your costs and scale with some of that stuff.
Everybody has those on speed dial, I think, right?
Yeah. I do admire you at least thinking about it, because I think just realizing that there is an impact is a big step forward in that direction.
I do my best, but I still won't learn anything and continue to outsource to the chatbot. I'm just kind of treating it like MoviePass and using it as much as possible until it goes away. Talking about like VC funding, it's just like I saw so many movies and I was like, I know this can't possibly be commercially viable, but while it's happening,
you're keeping shareholder value up high.
Yeah, this is correct.
Yeah, that's not my problem. I'm just going to use it until it goes away. So we live in LA, and a phrase that a lot of us are probably familiar with is that from central casting. And people use that phrase all the time to think about, when I think of something like doctor or scientist, like what is the first person that comes to mind when you think of that? And that's often what AI will give you. It'll kind of give you the most common denominator. So how do we stop AI from just kind of rehashing all our societal biases back at us?
I can share some thoughts. So a lot of these large models today are trained on like large volumes of data, like real world data that itself has its sort of inherent bias that comes with it. Certain segments are represented better or not. And so when we are like asking questions to these either chatbots or AI models, especially the people who are building these products, I think are in a huge place of responsibility to build them like in a responsible and ethical manner. And what I mean by that is a couple things. Right from the training data that goes into these models, we have to be very cognizant and very mindful of what data that goes, having ensure like checks and metrics that this is representative data. Sometimes there may be cases where we don't have a lot of that data, and so synthetic data comes into place. So right from the model training, that's the first step. You have to be very careful. Then when it comes to the products itself and the user experience and the product experience, there's user controls. The user has to be every single time in control of the data that they are giving and using. And I think this ties back to some of, Liz, you were mentioning like controls and the legal aspects. What data am I giving the user access to? What product? The product is using some user data. So where is it stored? How long is it going to be retained for? When can I delete it? Can I delete it? All these needs to be built into the product in those flows. The third piece is coming to like user feedback. Today, machines are capable of real-time performance. So can we build that user feedback that is going to make the system better over time. Like, hey, this response doesn't make sense. Like, and as users, I think we are also responsible. Like, when the system is not giving, like, we have to be able. We should give that feedback to the system so it get better over time. And lastly, I think there's an aspect of grounding in truth, which is, it's early days. The system is not going to get it right 100% of the time. So we just have to be very wary of that. And so, can we have human in the loop? Can we have grounding it into like factual reality or like knowledge bases? And there's technology there. There's RAGs, retrieval augmented. There's technology there, RAGs or knowledge graph. And so, giving the citation of where the source is coming from. And there's ways to prevent that. But I think like we're not at a stage where we can completely rely on AI as like on its own. We still need human in the loop. And so there's like a responsibility on people building the product. There's responsibility on us as users to provide that feedback. So these are some tangible ways to ensure we are stepping in the right direction.
So I think that there's a lot of ways to tackle the bias question and these kind of inherent biases in systems. I worked on an open standard with the World Ethical Data Foundation about checking different questions that you can ask at each individual checkpoint of when you're developing a model and collecting data. What are the questions I need to ask? How biased is this data? How biased am I during this process? Then during the deployment of a system, and then during continual check-ins and monitoring of that system, and questions that you would ask along the way to determine, different biases. One of the harder things, though, and this like comes out of the legal realm more into the humanities, is that those biases come from us. And so until we can really acknowledge where the biases come from and that they exist in the first place, it's way more difficult to take them out of systems. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges for responsible AI initiatives right now is that if we can't admit that the biases are there in the first place or exactly where they come from, because they're not coming from the system, they're coming from the training of the system and the data that's input in there, which is largely from all of us, right? And so that is one of the harder things is identifying how we can even see these biases if we can't recognize them in ourselves, and then also anticipating biases and patterns that are determined by AI algorithms that we may never have anticipated that algorithm could have seen or would have put together. And then so how do we even assess for that or look for it on the other side? And so there's so many things that go into the collection of data, and then just the constant monitoring of these systems and the ability of the individuals deploying the systems and monitoring them and the regulators looking at the systems to even be on top of all of that at any given time is a challenge.
I think it's really interesting talking about how AI can actually shine a light on biases that we didn't even know we had. There was a great story years ago about how they had this software to determine who would make a good engineer, and they were like, oh, lacrosse players. In the past, there's been a lot of lacrosse players who were engineers, so that means a lacrosse player is a good engineer. And that's like, you wouldn't make that connection, but if you like think about what a lacrosse player is and where they go to school and what they look like, you start to put those dots together of the bias that is there. So historically, women and underrepresented genders get pushed out of careers when they become fun and exciting. Basically, like, we started at the beginning of computers when it was hard and difficult and not exciting. But then as soon as the salary goes up and everyone wants to do it, you start to get pushed out. And we start to see this a little bit as experts are starting to get pushed out as the money flows in. And I know this is a very, very, not positive question, but like I said, I'll bounce back and forth. I'll get another silly one after this. But I'd love to hear how we make sure we stay in the loop and we are part of this success as it goes forward.
Yeah, I'll start. I think that I personally need two types of people in my life, both professionally and personally, that really help. One is kind of advocators who are going to advocate for you when you're not in the room. And then I think the other type of person that I need is sort of my hype man, hype woman, who I can always, and typically that's mutual, but someone, I just naturally am someone who is risk averse and doubt myself or get skeptical quickly. So it's important to have kind of that person to help bring me back to the positives. And on that advocator note, I would say it's really important to have facts for those people and documents for those people so that when you're not in the room and they're maybe forgetting the details, they can pull that up and say, this person worked on XYZ X number of times, and just having some of that documentation for when it is kind of confusing about why should we hire this person, sort of those biases start to kick in. Just making sure you have your data and your facts of the things that you've worked on. In Google, sometimes these are like our artifact documents, where you have kind of everything that you've worked on this year and the impact that it had, and just making sure that that's available to your advocates is my advice.
Absolutely, Lauren. I love that you mentioned having a sponsor, because I think, for all of us to be successful, we do need somebody who believes in us. So I touched a little bit about the skills, but I think, after having the skill set and having a sponsor, personally, I believe in 3 Bs. And that's like, be bold in your thinking, be brilliant in your execution, and most importantly, believe in yourself. When I reflect back, I think there were quite a few moments in my life where I was at the lowest, and imposter syndrome were fairly common, and sometimes we fail to actually recognize that. And it was at those times when I really needed somebody, a confidant, where who could remind me of all my accomplishments and what I believe in, and really believing in yourself. So I just want to say that there will be moments where you may feel the lowest, right? You may feel like you're not making an impact, you're not making a difference. Just go back to yourself, like really be bold in whatever you want to do, right? Whatever you want to pursue. And then once you make that decision, do it brilliantly. Like, put all of yourself into it. Do not doubt yourself. And just that belief that this will lead to something, a good outcome in the end, will get you through that.
I love that. And I'm just going to add my favorite mantra, which is, I've done hard things before. I can solve this hard problem again. And I say that to myself all the time at work. Every single time I have a bug, I'm like, I'm never going to solve this. Oh, wait. I've done this before. So we're starting to wind down before I'm going to actually open it to audience questions. So I'd like to look a little forward to the future. How do you see AI changing the way we work and live in the next 5 to 10 years? And then kind of as a follow-up, how can we personally make sure we nudge things in the right direction as more equitable AI going forward?
I think what's interesting is that just listening to everybody's answers to the last question, one thing I want to really focus on is that the barrier to entry in this conversation, specifically when we think about like AI, has been lower than ever. If you think about like what the cost is to break into any industry historically in any of our shifts in times, it's required money, it's required assets, it's required a lot more upfront. But now you have people in remote parts of the world being able to have these discussions at the boardroom, in the dinner table, and everything in between. So when I think about this, I think that as we look forward, recognize that we have that ability to enter and be, just be all the more, have all the more access to be able to enter and have these conversations and be confident knowing that we can be and have that seat at the table.
We can go down the line here. I'll go next. To build on that a little bit and to answer the last question, it's, having conversations with people in AI like 5 years ago was way different than having conversations with people in AI now, because there are people in AI that have just learned a couple of things or have played around on ChatGPT for a few minutes. And if you talk to those people, they may sound like they know what they're talking about, but in reality, you may know more than them. And I think that that's something that, that imposter syndrome that you talked about, it's real. And especially in a field like this where a lot of people are intimidated by the technology, and you may be, kind of concerned of jumping into something where you're not quite sure. Nobody knows. Like, there are experts in AI systems. That's real. But then there are a lot of people that are trying to figure this out. And if you are new to this space, you're one of those people, and don't put yourself below anybody else that is learning and trying to figure this out right now. Because trust me, in these conversations, I sometimes still get the kind of imposter syndrome, and then I'll get into a room and I'll be like, oh, okay, this is a way different conversation than I thought it was going to be. And so just don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And there are so many resources of Google, Microsoft, Amazon. They all have these free programs online right now, information that we would have never had access to and is very accessible. And so just get out there and learn if you're interested. And then how AI will change things over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, I think dramatically, but maybe not on the surface for some people. And I also think that this will coincide with a lot of societal shifts in other ways as well, which is going to make things a little bit more dramatic in some areas, and we'll have kind of changes of job workflows. So kind of figuring out what kind of impact you want to make in the future and where you think that will, the best place that you can position yourself to kind of move into a new economy that we're entering. There are some jobs that I don't think will change very much, and then there are some that I think will change dramatically, and those are largely in services and professional services areas. And so I think being prepared, having a flexible outlook, and getting involved. And again, this kind of aspect of playing. A lot of these tools are super fun to play with right now. And so getting in there and playing with them, understanding how they work, getting into a little bit of the background of how they were developed and how they may continue to develop over the next 5 to 10 years, and what kind of disruptive forces that will have on our workforce and society, opportunities for your children, different ways that we may want to kind of shift our thinking over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think I'm personally really excited about the advancements we might make in health. I'm really optimistic about that. And so I think somewhere maybe even before we started, someone mentioned, you're coding on your computer and then all of a sudden you realize it's dark outside. I would encourage everyone to actually get outside, go for those walks, take care of your health, because you might have an opportunity to really extend your life in the next 10 years based on the improvements that might come from health. So that's just kind of an aside to the original question.
I love that. And I think, Liz, you brought up a really good point that, there are so many resources available. There's so much information out there. And for some, it's great having all of that at your fingertips. For others, it could be really overwhelming. And that could be a barrier to entry, right? Where do I start? How do I get into this? This is just so much to absorb. I personally have gone through it. And what worked for me was just taking baby steps, one at a time, right? Just having very small, short goal that today I will read 3 lines of an article that talks about AI. That's it, just very small goal. And what you'll realize is that as you accomplish that, it gives you the confidence that, okay, you can go a little bit more, and it'll build your interest, and it won't all of a sudden seem like a huge mountain of information that you're trying to grab. So I hope, that works for some of you, because most of the time it's just that hesitation, that barrier that stops us from really, really being, giving all in and being out there and really making a difference in the field that we want to make a difference in.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? I think for me, that was super important. I don't have a computer science background, or I didn't. But then many years ago, I was like, I want to figure this out. I got very interested. And so I took, I don't know if it was on like Coursera or one of these, it was the Harvard CS50 class, which was like available basically for free. And like just like a basic computer science class online. And then that led to a cascade of kind of opening up doors and understanding things a lot more. And so if you don't have a technical background, just try to jump in somewhere, wherever that is, even if it's like the most basic computer science class, because that's probably what most of us need that didn't have a computer science background. But like there's so much out there. So try not to be intimidated, but jump in at whatever level you think is appropriate. And even some of the, and some of the chatbots as well, you can ask them very simple questions and they'll give you reasonably good answers for especially basic concepts, right? And you can start kind of this conversation until you understand it at an elementary level, and then at a high school level, and then at a college level kind of thing.
So 1 or 2 closing thoughts here. And so when we thought about AI, like maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it felt like a sci-fi coming out of a movie, self-driving cars. And so like when we look at project at the next 5 to 10 years, it will be AI everywhere. And today, like, yes, AI is everywhere in a lot of ways, but it's not democratized. It's like not everyone either has access or is using in their everyday workflows. And so that is, to me, like 5 to 10 years, every single person knows about it and uses it. And so how can we be a part of it is 20 years ago when the internet was new, we still learned it. We still got onto like Facebook. We all still got computers. 10 years ago when mobile was new, we maybe didn't have like mobiles at the time, but then today we all have a smartphone. And so like 5 or 10 years from now, we all are not using AI maybe today, but we will be there. And so it starts with baby steps, which you highlighted. And so what I'd like to walk you away with from this panel is like the growth and learning mindset. Yes, that you don't know today, but there's so many resources, YouTube videos, courses, online learning, even as simple as newsletters. Just pick one thing, commit to learning it daily, even if it's 5 to 10 minutes, and you will see like that difference compounds over time. So AI is within reach.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions if anyone has anything. Oh, and there's a mic going around. I was going to run around and get some steps, but this is better.
This is the mic.
Yep. Yeah, you talk to it and you can throw it.
Hi. Okay.
I don't even know how this works.
So it was a great discussion. Loved hearing to all of you. So one thing that keeps on in my mind every time is seeing the advancements in this AI. So we are creating a human brain, kind of, we are mimicking the human brain using the technology. I'm worried about coming to a common public or the user, end user. Is it going to have an effect on the human brain in reverse in the future? Like, are we going to lose any of our skills in the next, maybe in a decade or next couple of decades? The skills that we originally have, we are giving it to a robo. So what is that? Do you all have any opinion on that? Which skill would you think will be vanishing in few years from now?
I'm going to let the technical people answer that more, but I think absolutely yes.
No, as a general person, if you just think about it, like maybe we had a drawing skill. Now we give it to a laptop or anything, we just draw it on there. So we forget to use our hand or the color combinations. Now we can take the help from the AI, like, can you suggest the color combinations for this? So the human brain stops thinking there, like, okay, what is that we actually want, we actually need?
This is the WALL-E scenario, right? That we lose our capacity. Do you want to?
I mean, I would say, I think that people have concerns about this with social media today as well, and the effects on that. I would also recommend reading some books. I read The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil, and that's a really positive outlook on this blend of biology and computation. So I think that could be an interesting place to start, and just kind of, I could hear a lot of the things that you've thought about, and that's a very extensive book that might help you kind of break down some of the thoughts there.
Oh, nice.
I mean, I can share a little bit about how I'm thinking about it. So, the way I try to look at the history, right? When you go back, there's always, like, when we started with computing and when computers came in, like, everybody had that, computers can do everything, and what are humans going to do? But, there is hope. We all are still very relevant.
Because seeing the past, we have references to calculator and all, but seeing the pace of AI and mimicking a human brain, by a human brain. So
absolutely true. But there is a certain type of hope that I have that we will, we may not be thinking in the same way we are thinking right now, but we'll evolve in a different way. And, my hope is that evolution makes us a more superior species than the bots.
Yeah, I think
we only grow in this, but not lose too much of ourselves.
Yeah, I think it will change things, right? It will change the way that we interact. And hopefully, I mean, I think a lot of us on this panel here, and if you're working in this field, you have to have this kind of hope about the future and how this technology is going to be a positive, catalyst for humanity. But it will change things just in the same way that a lot of computers have changed things. I think art is an interesting example of how things can, change and move as well. And we'll see what happens with art with AI generated, capabilities. But I think it's I like to have hope on the future here.
Yeah,
And
I
think that-
absolutely have hope because I'm a techie and I dive into the concepts like anything. But just, out of curiosity, I'm just curious about what is that, how my future versions look like.
I mean, I think you could also shift it if you're thinking about your brain specifically. The better that computers are at understanding the brain, the better we'll be able to help people who have brain damage issues. Maybe people in this room have personal experience with that. But it's not, you could kind of shift it to if they can do this, then it helps us improve that for everyone, and kind of frame it that way.
I want to end this question, so I'm going to add one fun thing, which is to think about how many phone numbers do you currently have memorized? When I was a younger person, I had to memorize a lot of phone numbers, and now I get to use all that processing speed to watch Netflix instead of memorizing phone numbers.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear the next question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
So my question mainly is when you guys we're talking about soft skills when it comes to talking about AI, because when you're talking about like going on other like learning centers and going on courses to do basic computer science or data analytics and all that stuff, it's like easy to like identify. We've heard them many times that this is like what you want to have in your resume. We go to anyone's LinkedIn, but it doesn't list like these are the soft skills courses that now have helped me in the past, and now thinking of the future, how am I talking to AI? What would those, I know this is like hypothetical, like what do you envision those would be helpful for us to learn and maybe in the future we evolve into?
I think we've all talked a little bit about this, but it's the one of the soft skills I feel like that I am tasked with every single day is, it's going to sound a little LA, very woo-woo, but a lot more mindfulness, right? Because think of a Gemini. In order to have Gemini work for you, you have to be able to ask it the right question. Mm-hmm. And if you're not necessarily getting the right output, it's almost like taking a step back versus taking a step forward. Think of like what the hard skills have had us do. It's like if you're not getting the output that you want, you then take a step forward and you work a little bit harder and you roll up your sleeves, and even as I'm explaining this, I'm going quicker, right? There's like a faster pace. Versus if I'm sitting behind my computer looking at a Gemini and saying like, all right, it's not landing the way I need it to land. It's those soft skills require me to be a little bit more intuitive with what is the question that I need to ask in order to get the output that I'm looking for. So one, listening and speaking, but it's funny as I'm saying this too, isn't that like the fundamentals of like humankind, right? Like in order to be a better friend, you stop and you listen. So in order to have something like a Gemini, we'll just keep plugging this in to work for you. It's leaning into a bit more of the human side than more of the like hyper efficiency, anything almost like under the wing of like the capitalistic system that we've been so, we've recognized as a part of our society, and that has probably mobilized us all. But I think that newer catalyst that hopefully gives us more time back are those soft skills that we've been all talking to and speaking on, and how it enables our day-to-day.
I love how you asked that question, because you asked the question of the computer science classes, the AI, ML classes, those are the easy part. And that's true, because the hard part is like this, like the questions of humanity and how are we going to kind of evolve into the future? What are those skills? How can we get them back? And those are traditionally not the ones that we're like, especially people that are academically minded, as comfortable kind of diving into. But that is where that's maybe unfortunately for society, that's where it is. That's what we need to do. That's the work that we need to do, is our sort of interactions with each other and like the human side of this, the soft skills of if AI is going to take over a lot of this intellectual load of work that we have, then we get to do the things that we're so good at as humans, but we have to get better at them again. And that's, I think, in my point of view, those are the areas where like for my kids, for like, you know, for myself, that's where I sort of like think and struggle a lot of going into the future, is what are these areas going to be? How are we going to, as a society, get back on track in a way that those are the soft skills that are important? Those skills are monetized. Those skills are, you know, considered valuable in our society because we have gone this like intellectual trajectory for so long.
A quick plug-in for the full crowd, someone who I think does a really good job at explaining both the engineering side and the human side. He's a former Googler. His name is Mo Gaudat. He was former Chief Business Officer of Google X. And he has a ton of books now that talk about like the science and engineering behind our lives, happiness, stress. And he talks a lot about AI and how it plugs into how we lean further away from the hard skills and lean further into the soft skills in order to be less process-oriented, be more human-oriented. So just a quick plug for the room.
Awesome. One more? I think we have one more, and then I'll just do one final wrap-up question for everyone. It'll be quick, I promise.
Okay. Wanted to go over here.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for all your thoughts. I'm wondering about what other examples that you know of where the workforce is scaling its entire, hierarchy for being more oriented and being much more conducive to be able to better adopt AI among its processes and people, and in doing that in a methodical way that serves as a good example for the rest of us to follow as employees.
People are doing it in a methodical way, I don't know. But there are certainly industries that are kind of working towards that. I think, there are industries that will be disrupted earlier, like I think customer service industries, and maybe you can speak a bit to that area. And then some, with like automated driving and automated tasks, those industries as well. We can kind of look at what's happening in those areas. But I don't, the unfortunate thing for all of us, right, is that there's no like one adult in the room that's got control of this situation. It's a real patchwork, and I think we're going to continue to see that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the customer service.
So I think, like Liz, that you mentioned that there will be some areas or fields that will take the first step towards this advancement. And most of what we are seeing is that, fields that are related to more customer support or things where you interact with customer a lot are the ones that are taking that leap of faith and making advancements in that. I think that I also like to think that there are domains that are more specific but want to use AI, for example, medicine and things like that. So, there will be a certain lag in them in catching up, but I think that they're not that far.
A positive note in that is I like to think about historical things that have happened that are similar. Think about when Microsoft Excel came out and they thought that we wouldn't need like accountants anymore, that it would like magically work. And instead we have Excel experts who can do more work because they're not like writing things down on pen and paper, but it's different work. And it's actually, I think, more interesting than having to just hand copy numbers and add things up. So one thing I would like to aspire to that is let our panelists do any call to action they have and any plugs. So think about a late night show where they're plugging their movie. This is our chance to just plug away, and I'm going to do it first to show you what I mean. So I'm a public speaker, so if you like my jokes and want to have me at any of your events, please go to my website, michellebrenner.com, find me on LinkedIn, say hi. I also do personal coaching, so if you want the one-on-one jokes, just let me know. So does anyone like to do any plugs for what they'd like the audience to do?
I would just like the audience to, kind of act on that BBB. Like be bold, execute brilliantly, and then believe in yourself, because that has really worked for me. And I would love to hear if you have stories to share. Please hit me up on LinkedIn, and I would love to chat more on that.
Who has used Google Cloud? Okay. Who has used the text-to-speech API in Google Cloud? Nice. Okay. Well, if you have any feedback, you can come talk to me. And then also, if you haven't tested it or haven't used Google Cloud, go check it out and test out our voices. In December, we launched our Journey Voices, which use our new Audio LM model. So that's my plug.
I will plug the nonprofit XRSI. So we do, as I mentioned before, we're a research and standards developing organization, but we really work at the cutting edge of where technologies converge. So where AI, blockchain, and extended reality converge. We're working on a lot of the issues, including data capture of biometric information, medical XR initiatives, all kinds of privacy and safety work. If you're interested in where it all gets interesting and weird, contact me and go on the xrsi.org website, because it's really looking at how all of these technologies will really function in the future and the ways that we need to be cognizant and aware and advocates for our own autonomy and all of these questions. So anyway, reach out to me if you have any questions about that.
Maybe more of a message for the room, but how often do you hear, well, there's no seat for women at the table, so we're going to have to find it, or we're going to have to create it, or whatever it may be. No one is an AI expert. This is so new for all of us. We're all learning as we go. Recognize that you being in the room is you building that table. Recognize that this room alone, we don't know what everything's going to look like in 5 years, but you're asking all these questions now in such preliminary stages. So that is very powerful. And I hope when you walk away from here, you recognize that you'll be able to tell your grandkids one day that you were in the early days and early discussions around AI.
I think one thing I'd like to plug in is that commitment to yourself. So as you're walking out of this room, think of just one thing that you're going to start doing or already like facing some problem, and you're going to think about how AI can solve that for you. And it's either for some of the ones that are early, like it's just learning about it, or like following a specific, reading a book or a newsletter, or the ones who are like a little bit more and don't know more. What's that one problem that I'm facing, I'm spending a lot of time on, and so I'm going to look at how AI can solve this. And so like that one thing that you can think of, I think that'll be a gift to me as you walk out of the room.
Michelle, can I ask you one question?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you get to watch movies at work?
Is my boss here? No? Yes.
Woo!
One of the perks of working at Netflix is that you get to be part of the preview club and watch things before they get released.
Ooh.
So
So you gotta tell us how Bridgerton is then.
Wonderful. Sexy. But yes, that is one of my perks. So like, I don't know how any company could ever lure me away because I am completely spoiled now. So I wanted to thank Google for hosting us. I want to thank the audience for investing in themselves and coming out here and learning things and knowing that you're doing something for yourself today when you could be at home watching Netflix. Watch it later. I want to thank the panelists for teaching me so much today. All your answers, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I can't wait for you to be on my podcast. And thank you so much to the host for letting me do this and letting me get to be listened to for an hour, which is always my dream. Thank you.
Thank you to the coordinators, too, in the back. They're doing all the arranging.
AV Club and our support staff, security staff. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for the great panel. Oh, yeah. All right, so bringing up our featured speaker now, we are going to have a talk from my coworker, Ariana Cano from Blue Shield of California, Health Information Technology team. She's passionate about designing human-centered solutions for a better future. Her previous experience includes research, design, and prototyping for AI and MR applications in collaboration with Intel and Meta. Her approach to design is critical, empathetic, and research-driven, and she has a great deal to say to us today, so welcome so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's awesome to see so many people in one place, especially so many designers and technologists and practitioners. You work from home, so this is amazing. And I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all today about the UX of generative AI. And specifically, what I would like to talk to you about is critical design perspectives. And so these are perspectives that designers can employ as part of the process of building out generative AI user experiences. So what is UX design? A lot of us may know this, but UX design delivers meaningful and relevant experiences that solve user problems based on data-driven research. This is usually going to be formal user research. But when it comes to emerging technologies, and I've noticed this especially with generative AI, we don't always have existing research that we can use to understand the technology and the users, even just at a baseline. And so as designers, this leaves us in kind of a weird spot, and we have to shift away from the traditional UX methodology and move towards a more critical and research-driven perspective. So I'm going to walk you through my personal design practice steps to kind of work through these problems. And I usually like to do these things simultaneously. And the first is knowing the technology and understanding what generative AI is from a designer's perspective. And then secondly, understanding emerging user sentiment about the technology and user concerns that we're starting to see pop up. And then thirdly, employing critical design strategies that engage our learning from the first two. So when it comes to the technology, from an engineer perspective, they know the technology pretty well, especially if they're working with it. But for designers, we don't always know a lot about how exactly it works. But it's really important with generative AI because we can't make design decisions that are informed if we don't know what the technology is capable of, what its limitations are, maybe what it should be used for, and when it shouldn't be used at all. So just to begin with, artificial intelligence, AI, is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs. Machine learning is a subset of AI that uses algorithms to detect patterns in big data sets. And then generative AI is a machine learning model that can take that and generate new data. So that's where generative AI kind of falls in the AI spectrum. And we've actually been using AI in everyday life for years. It was invented in the 1950s. And we see this in everyday tools like spell check or chatbots, which can be pesky or really fun, depending on your perspective. But generative AI is still pretty new. And we're seeing this with tools that have emerged like ChatGPT or deepfakes, which have been in the news a lot recently. And as we kind of talked about before, essentially the way that generative AI models work is that they're trained to detect and learn from patterns and data and then predict. But there are actually many different types of generative AI models. And for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about large language models, which are designed for natural language processing. And basically the way that they work is they're trained on these big, huge data sets of text, and then they identify patterns in between words to predict the next word in a sequence. And so engineers, you're probably going to hate me for this description, but this is a very designerly way of putting it. The user might input, hey, can you list some examples of pets? And the model will do its little thing, beep, beep, boop, and say, oh, hey, I know these words go together. This is the most likely order. Cats, dogs, and parrots are pets. So now that we have kind of a baseline understanding of how the technology works from a designer's perspective, we can start to dig into emerging sentiment around the technology. And when I say emerging sentiment, what I mean is really like the cultural ideas that are forming around generative AI, what people are thinking about, what people are talking about. And this is not formal UX research. A lot of this is pulled from media, television, movies, books, conversations, news. So this is really the way people are feeling about it. And this can help serve as kind of a baseline framework for understanding research and design perspectives. And the first one I want to talk about, which we've already mentioned today in the panel, but I think it's really important, is bias. This is something that is showing up so much in research. People are really concerned about bias. And that's because AI reflects human worldviews, including our biases. AI bias, and specifically in the instance I'm talking about here, is when models produce biased results that reflect and perpetuate human biases in a society. And these include historical and social inequalities. And when we go back and think about the way that large language models, for example, are trained, they're trained on data sets. And the things that make up those data sets are basically just text. It's lots and lots of words. And this can come from all over the place. And if we really think about text, there's a lot of meaning put into a word. It comes from one person's worldview. The sequence that it's put in is a very individual and unique sequence when you're building out a sentence. And so when that text is turned into data, it doesn't lose that perspective. And data is not neutral. It is reflective of the worldview of the person defining, selecting, classifying, and of course, creating it. And I really love this quote from Kate Crawford, who wrote this wonderful book, Atlas of AI. She said, "Data and data sets are not objective. They are creations of human design. We give numbers their voice, draw inferences from them, and define their meaning through our interpretations." And so when we think about the way that data can translate to bias, At best, bias can lead to small hiccups in the way a model works or hallucinations, but at worst, it can lead to discrimination and further oppression. And this is a really serious issue. Researchers recently in academia have been looking into this a lot. And one specific study found that when prompting Midjourney to generate images of houses in specific countries, stereotypes were present regardless of whether prompts explicitly mentioned identity and language or excluded all demographic language altogether. And then the second emerging sentiment that I kind of want to touch on is hallucination, which is related to bias, but it can also have really harmful consequences. And it's emerging as its own kind of big user concern area. And hallucination is when a generative AI model produces misleading or incorrect information with confidence. I've included a couple examples here. I really want to walk through the one at the top because I love it. This is from Meta's Galactica AI, which was out for like 3 days before getting pulled because it hallucinated so much. And this was a large language model that was trained on scientific and academic articles to basically summarize and generate academic content. Here you can see the user has prompted it for a wiki article on bears living in space. And we would expect that it would say, hey, bears don't live in space. But actually it said the Soviet Union was the first country to put a bear into space, and that the animal was named Bars and it was launched on Sputnik 2, which like honestly sounds like an awesome movie, but never ever happened. And well, this is kind of a more silly result, and we can clearly say, well, that's not true. It can lead to users acting based on incorrect information. And so in the bottom example here, this is the result of journalists asking ChatGPT when the New York Times first reported on AI. And ChatGPT's response was to create a conference completely made up that never happened. And so imagine somebody were to take this and quote it in their thesis paper. That could have real life consequences. And so hallucination can lead to, not only users acting based on incorrect information, but also the spread of misinformation. So it's a really good thing to keep an eye on and to ask your users about. And then the final thing I want to touch on here is the idea of removing the human. A future without the human in it can feel really uncertain and scary. And I think we've even heard that today. And I think we can all kind of relate to this on a fundamental level because this is not a new fear. If we think about like the Terminator or Steven Spielberg's AI movie, this has been around for a really long time. And specifically with generative AI, something that we're noticing is that it's starting to emerge more specifically in relation to the workplace. And so according to Washington State University, 32% of workers are concerned about AI making their positions obsolete altogether. And Microsoft's Work Trend Index survey found that 49% of workers are similarly worried that AI will replace their jobs. However, the same respondents in the same survey, 70% said that they would delegate more work to AI to lessen their workloads. And I think this is really about perspective. And more research will kind of uncover a little bit more of the nuance in this area. So it's something to keep an eye on. So now that we kind of understand how the technology works and what some emerging user sentiments are around it, we can really begin to apply those towards critical design strategies. And I'm not gonna lie, designers, this involves being like a bit more of a generalist, which we don't all like to do, but it's really fun. I encourage you to embrace it. And the first step here is to become a stakeholder. So as generative AI designers and researchers, we can also be stakeholders in how models are trained, implemented, and designed. My first and biggest tip here is don't be afraid to ask questions and collaborate with your engineer colleagues. Ask smart people stupid questions. They love to answer it. And my engineer colleagues have always been really receptive when I say, hey, how does this work? Can you break this down for me? I think also it's really important to advocate for user research if you see areas that need additional clarity. And this is something that you should do generally in UX, but I think we see it especially with generative AI because users may not have a framework at all to understand the tool. So more research is always kind of better. And then you can also be a part of the governance process. This seems really intimidating, but generally it just involves bugging people and inserting yourself in the process. If you see something that you don't agree with, it's okay to say something. And keep an eye on what your organization is doing in terms of governance and make sure that your ethics are aligned and that you're kind of following what's going on. And similarly, it's really important to advocate for inclusivity and diverse perspectives to make sure that you're catching bias. And this doesn't just apply to generative AI. This really should apply to all of UX design because we want to reflect the diverse perspectives of our users by incorporating diverse perspectives into the research and design process. And of course, use generative AI tools. Become a user to understand what interacting with the technology is like. You might love it, you might hate it. That's okay. If you're a user, then you already have that framework in mind and you can better craft your questions for your users. And then finally, always be critical when you're researching generative AI. Never take anything at face value. Make sure you're cross-referencing academic research, user research, industry research. Never take anything from one place and really dig into the why when you're asking users questions. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit now from the research to the design to the implementation process, some actionable things that designers can take away from this to start building out generative AI tools. So research is a really vital part of the process when we're designing generative AI experiences. I know I keep harping on this, but it's so important. And I have found that when researching users, they may not always know what the generative AI is. They may not know what generative AI tools are. They just may not have any background with the technology at all. So it can be helpful to start broad and then narrow down on the specific tool that you're researching. You can maybe get a feel for user familiarity with generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and then you can ask open-ended qualitative questions to get a better understanding of specific user concerns. And then from there, you can move forward with interviews and surveys that kind of dig into user problems and needs a little bit deeper. Now, with large language models, all of a sudden the user experience includes a conversational dimension. And this is a real challenge for UX designers because we're used to working with content designers who usually do some wordsmithing or maybe we do some minor wordsmithing, but then all of a sudden there is so much dimension and so much interaction within the conversation that it becomes its own standalone experience. And so one way to approach this is to consider the information architecture of a conversation. And Nielsen Norman Group research found recently that there are 6 types of conversations that users tend to have with large language model tools. These range from search query conversations that are basically similar to Googling something, to more long-form conversations that have lots of refinements and lots of prompting happening. And it might be useful to consider user research that aims to understand what types of conversations your users are having, because it may change the design of your product. And then, of course, with UI and interaction design, always ensure that your design choices are user-centered. This is a given, but really keep the human in the loop when you're designing for generative AI experiences. And we kind of mentioned this before when we were talking about emerging sentiment, but trust is so important. We are asking users to trust the information that we're giving them. We're asking them to trust our tool. And if we want to do that, then we need to build transparency. And we can build transparency about information, about privacy, about the AI sensitivity, really about anything. Some ways that I like to do this are to explicitly state to the user what the model can and cannot do. You can include disclaimers about the information produced by generative AI in the actual design. You can also give the user lots of options that keep them in control of the experience and the interface specifically. And then, of course, ensure that your designs reflect appropriate social norms, both in your tone and in interactions. So I pulled an example here from Gemini, and you can see up at the top it has prompt suggestions, and those hint at what the model can do. It also has a neutral visual tone with lots of grays and whites, and it has a conversational layout so that even if users are not familiar with the technology itself, they have a framework in mind for how to interact with the tool. And you can see it includes disclaimers about privacy and output as well for users. Legal teams will love this. And what you can't see here is when the user actually enters a prompt and sends it off, the user has the option to stop the model from generating. And we see this with a lot of tools, but this is a really great way to keep users in control of the process. And then finally, the design mantra, continue iterating. This is such a given, but with generative AI technology, it's changing really quickly. And as it becomes a part of day-to-day life, user feelings and interactions with it will change, probably a lot. So it's super important to keep doing user research and redesigns and usability testing even after product launch to make sure that your product is both user-centered and solving a real human problem. We are all stakeholders in generative AI, so let's design a better tomorrow by adopting a critical research-driven perspective today. Thank you, everyone. And I believe we have time for questions now.
All right, as one of Ariana's design or engineer colleagues, I'd like to say that's totally true. Ask your engineers questions. They love to sound smart by explaining things. All right, has a question.
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so with regards to the healthcare industry and how you're using AI, I was wondering, are there any issues that have come up with, like, let's say I heard there was an AI bot that passed a medical school exam, or reading an MRI, writing an MRI report and just dropping it in. But are there any, I guess, challenges you're facing specifically within healthcare?
This is a great question, and I can't speak specifically to the work that we're doing, but what I have noticed a lot in talking with colleagues, especially other colleagues in healthcare, is it's really important to keep a human in the loop. Sometimes, and actually a lot of the time, AI is not going to be the answer because healthcare is a really sensitive environment. A lot of the time, people just want to be heard. And an AI may not be able to hear them in the way that they need to be heard. And so really, I think a big part of this is focusing on what that user problem is. And AI may not be the end solution to that a lot of the time, is what I've found. So hopefully that answers your question. But I think in terms of oversight, if we can always keep a human in the loop, especially in healthcare because it's so sensitive, that's really ideal.
Hi, so as generative AI gets more prevalent and it gets more powerful, what is your approach to implementing UI systems where the LLM actually makes a decision? So it needs to display a different prompt or like a different part of the UI.
Ooh, I love this question. I was hoping someone would ask this question. So something that we've been kind of noodling with a little bit more recently in the design world is the idea of generative user interfaces. And these are user interfaces where the user doesn't necessarily have to query the tool in order for it to change. The model itself will be dynamically changing. And you know, I think right now we don't totally have an idea of what these design systems are going to look like. But what I have found really helpful is to just sit down and prototype and like kind of throw spaghetti at the wall. And, you know, I think it may end up being something more like a search, or it may end up being, you know, like a conversation, or it may end up being none of those things at all. And I think a really important thing with generative user interfaces is going to be pulling the right data sources at the right time. And then in particular, something I've noticed with generative UI design is we're faced with this problem of what information should be dynamically changing and personalized and what information should be static. And that really comes back down to what your user needs are. And so I think user research can kind of answer that question for you. You know, what do your users absolutely need to see globally at all times? And then what needs to be a little bit more customized, personalized? What is allowed to change? And I think we'll get a better idea as time goes on, but really I've found testing with users to be the best way to understand like where that dynamic content lands for them.
I got it. You want me to, yeah, here you go.
Thank you so much. It's quite informative. I have a question. A strong background in software design and computer programming. And so a lot of this is new for those of us who are doing client server and all of that. So I'm just now hearing about Gemini today. As a person that wants to bring AI development into the inner city, that's what I do with a nonprofit, teaching young students as well as young adults how to get into the space. Is Gemini the software that you use for the fundamentals? I know I go from coding, and you have the coding software, and then you have the source. And with Microsoft, I've developed the Chat GPTs. What do we use for source to code the actual coding? Is that what Gemini does?
This might be more of an engineer question.
Okay.
But from my perspective, I think just to begin with, from a teaching perspective, I love to tell people to play with a variety of large language model tools if they're interested in starting to design and build those, just because they're all a little bit different. They're all a little similar, but they're all a little bit different. And if you can figure out where those quirks are and what works best for you, then that's the best one to go with, in my opinion. It's sort of like exercise. What you like is what you're going to end up doing. So I encourage you to definitely give them all a try, or introduce others to them and have them give them a try. And I think something that is really important when introducing new folks to generative AI who may not be familiar with it yet is to introduce from a critical perspective. And that's where some of that emerging sentiment can come into play, is just like understanding from the get-go that like this is not a neutral tool. It's gonna have bias in it. And the way that we solve that problem is not just about representation, it is about acknowledging that bias to begin with. So that's where I like to kind of start.
Perfect, thank you.
More? You have one? Here. Okay.
Hi, thanks. I was actually wondering more on your own experience with AI and how it has affected your like tool chain, your process. Is that starting to make its way into how you're making those decisions, rather than the end user UI, your own personal experience of AI changing the way that you work?
Yeah, so I use a little bit of AI in my workflow, usually for writing, because I'm a terrible writer. And that's where I find it to be particularly useful, especially when I'm doing like more UI-based work. But really, I don't use it for anything design research related, because to me, I trust users. And especially when I'm, for example, going through lots of like qualitative data as part of a survey, or if I'm like post-user interview trying to analyze everything and then translate that to design decisions, I don't quite trust AI to do that for me, because I want to make sure that I'm capturing all of those user needs. And a lot of the time, when we talk to users, what they actually say they need isn't what they actually need. Like the root problem generally tends to be a lot bigger than what the immediate problem is. And our goal in UX is really to solve that root problem, not necessarily put a Band-Aid on the immediate problem. And so I want to make sure that I'm capturing that. And so I don't always involve AI in my workflow for that sort of thing, but when it comes to more UI-based stuff, and especially prototyping, yeah, I'll throw that thing in ChatGPT.
All right, one more. I just was wondering if you can give us an example of sometimes that, well, personally, every time we would launch a tool, we would do a lot of research, examples, and comparisons of other people that have already solved this issue. But at some points, we would launch it and start seeing how the users were interacting with it, and we were completely wrong. So everybody had to halt everything they were doing to fix it, so users wouldn't start dropping out of our app. So just a question, has this happened to you? And can you just enlighten us?
Yes. This is the crux of UX designers everywhere. This is why we always iterate, is just because almost always when you launch something, people are going to appropriate it and use it in a totally unexpected way. And most of the time it's really fun to see, but sometimes like a great example that I thought of actually during the end of that panel was Excel, right? Everybody thought it would replace accountants. Now people do speedrunning Excel tournaments, which is like really fun, but I can bet you the designers who built Excel did not imagine that it would be used for that. And so I think what's really key there is asking really early on really juicy qualitative questions to truly understand who your users are beyond like features or anything, so that when those inevitable things come up and those misuses happen, you can understand more easily why they're happening, and you can kind of solve that problem a little bit more quickly, versus like if you don't do that, super qualitative research at the beginning and you don't know the user super well, then it may actually be a bigger problem.
Okay. One more. Anybody over there? I don't think I can throw it that far.
So just a quick question. So you talked about like keeping a neutral tone and just like keeping everything kind of, I guess, I don't want to call it plain, but just like neutral. But like, I guess like when dealing with wanting to give more empathy and more like emotion and just like teaching a generative AI or making more like designs more responsive to emotions and moods and things like that, like how do you approach doing that without kind of skewing too far and like taking things to the extreme, but also like being conscious of like sensitive information and like rooms where like maybe sensitive information is being passed or like shared?
This is a really good question. And I just have to say, tone doesn't necessarily have to be neutral. I think Gemini uses it, ChatGPT uses it. A lot of these large language models have a very neutral tone, and I think it's precisely because users are asking about so many things that they can't possibly design for every solution. But I think the right tone is the most appropriate tone for what your users are using the tool for, And so, of course you're going to get stuff from like branding people and you have to follow certain guidelines. But at the end of the day, when it really comes down to it, I think you have to just ask yourself, for example, if my users are going to be asking super serious questions of a large language model, am I going to want to have interactions that like pop and explode and are like super animated? Or are they going to need something that's like maybe a bit more toned down or something that's softer? And so I think one exercise that can be helpful for this is like mapping out your user needs to some keywords. So you can say mellow, but not soft, or, users might need, gray tones, but not somber. And that can kind of help you narrow down a little bit in your design choices. What is the most appropriate tone and color palette and interactions and stuff like that? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Ariana. Folks, we're going to take a little break. We're going to resume the program at 3:15. There's some food right outside this room. Please help yourself. That's for us. The restrooms are just down the hall, but please don't wander too far. Stay in the general area. 3:15. We'll see you back here. Don't forget, we got prizes to give away, so don't go anywhere. Thank you so much. Okay, folks. Let's wrap up those conversations. Hope everybody got a little to eat, little to drink. I really enjoyed the brownie, so please sample the dessert if you can. Welcome back. Welcome back. Settle down. All right, cool. Our next speaker that we're happy to welcome to the stage is Jane Yang. She is head of growth at Aspecta, and she's going to talk to us about the future of work and the impact of AI. Come on up, Jane.
Hi everyone, this is Jane, and I'm actually super nervous right now because I haven't been speaking in such a large crowd, in front of a large crowd for a while. But thanks everyone, thanks for the host to having me here today. And today I really want to talk about, how AI is gonna impact the future of workplace. And actually, when I first know about that, I'm going to speak at this event, my PR team was telling me, oh, it's great, Jane, that we're gonna prepare you a bunch of slides for you to present, and you need to turn those, audiences into the user of our startup. But I was saying, no, I really don't want to do that, because, today is, International Women's Day, so I really want to just talk about, my personal journey, my personal story of, how I think of AI can really impact the future of workplace. Actually, let me, just start with my talk first, and then I can run through a little bit introduction on what impacted me to start the Aspect 2 years ago. So I was born and raised in China, and until I was 14. And one day my parents suddenly decided, let's just send these kids to the States. And so I came to the States for my high school and stayed here since then. So it's been 10 years since I first came to the States. Just because my parents were thinking that, there's actually a lot of gender inequality in China, which not every girl has a privilege to be able to get the best resources, to be able to access the best things as a girl, purely because of that. And I wouldn't want to, criticize too much on that, because I think that's the common problem for a lot of Asia countries. So I came to the States and studied through, my high school and college. And when I first came here, I didn't really speak too much of English. So my speaking was really poor. I cannot really understand what my teachers were teaching at the lectures. So didn't have too many friends when I first came to the States. So that's actually how I started to study computer science by myself, because it's actually quite easy and simple, just like math. Whether your code compiles or not, it's just an answer of 0 and 1. So I started to study CS when I was in high school. And feel pretty confident when I first started, until one day I was in a hackathon, and I was pretty disappointed that day, because I figure most of the people who are participating in the hackathon were guys. So sorry for guys that are sitting down there, but the reality is when I was attending the hackathon, there's not much girls or females who are attending that. And I think that's the general outlook of the tech industry even today. So I was pretty discouraged, and that's also why one of the main reasons that I didn't choose to study CS when I got into college. And until one day, one of my friends in college, she invited me to a club called Girls Who Code. Basically, the mission of the club is to gather girls who study around the CS major or data science major, to be able to foster a close, inclusive community for everyone to be able to get together, to study the code, and of course to support each other from whatever perspective. And that actually relighted the little candle in my heart, saying, okay, now I still want to enter the tech world, because there's still a large group of community who's gonna sit there to support you, no matter what gender you are, or whatever your background is. So so I reclaimed a second major on the data science and restarted my journey in the tech world. And that's actually how we started. I started at first place. And one day, that was actually near my graduation day, I was talking to a lot of my friends, because people were all struggling on finding a job. And one of the problems I realized was that even though we seem to have this have eliminated a lot of the bias towards females in the tech industry, but there's still a lot of hidden like bias in the workplace. And I was talking to a lot of my friends who didn't have, the privilege to came to the States, who have stayed in China. And I started to realize that people are not getting equal opportunities just because of their gender. And I think most of you here has been heard about this phrase, or at least all the girls here, that women are promoted in the workplace because of their performance, but male are promoted based on their potential. So that's actually one of the things that really makes me sad. And I just want to help all the women out there who will be able to basically showcasing whatever they are capable of doing just through a very simple way. And, starting from the first principle that way of solving this problem is, so I basically write a set of large language model to be able to do code analysis on people's work on GitHub. So that was actually one of the side projects I did in college, and I realized that I can actually use that model to help people to basically just demonstrate whatever they are capable of doing, like without any bias on their gender, which college they went to, what company they worked in the past. So that's how I started at Spexa. So just to help people be able to demonstrate their skills. And not long after I started it, I was getting constant call with especially a lot of people who are in the less privileged countries, that people who don't really have the opportunities to go to whether it's CMU or Berkeley or all those universities that we've all been heard about, or getting a job at Google or Amazon or all those big techs. Just it's not because they're not capable of doing that. It's purely just because they don't have the equal opportunity to be able to access to all those resources. So I started to pivot the product of Spexa a little bit, just because I figure I shouldn't just making a product that is free open source out there for people to use to have fun. I should use it to solve some real problems. So I started to reshape the product to make it more like a social network. And of course, also, I still keep the function of helping people to demonstrate whatever they are capable of doing. Just because one day I realized that because before TikTok or Instagram or all those social media platforms ever existed, there's no such thing called creator economy. People are just getting a job from 9 to 5 to working at a marketing company or a media company to be able to earn bread for their family. But with Spexa, what I really want to do is, because of course we're not there yet, but what I really want to do is to have this thing called developer economy, because it naturally makes sense, because your code is having value, and people shouldn't be just judging you because of your background, because of whether you went to all those fancy universities, get all those fancy degrees, or you work at those companies that that are deemed to be big tech, like all those giant companies, because a lot of people who are in Asia or East Europe or South America, they don't have the privilege, ability to be able to access to those resources. So I just want to start to build this community, and that's actually what I put in this slide. So I want to build an inclusive like tech community through Aspecta, or it could be through other startups or companies. It's just one of the things I really wanted to see in the world. So basically allowing all the minorities, I would say it's not like only for minorities, but I think it can like shift the life of minority people in a very dramatic way, because we are eliminating all the bias towards like, or the lack of channel for those people to be able to access to those good resources that we all, like most of people in this room, will have. So I actually don't want to talk too much about Aspecta at today's like present, but let me think. Let me explain it in a more like non-including Aspecta's way. Basically, I was building this thing, help people to demonstrate the work they've done in the past and the achievement they have, and displaying all the projects they've been done in the past, so that a kid in whether it's in Southeast Asia or South America will be able to demonstrate whatever they're capable of doing in front of everyone out there, whether it's employers or it's someone who just want to start an exciting project but couldn't find a partner to start the project with. So with those very like, I often say like code are very cold. They don't have much emotions, that we're just doing a bunch of sentiment analysis on all the code we have, but the code itself should be non-biased, like without any sentiment by itself. So basically I'm just having AI to be able to analyze whatever we are capable of doing and provide us a new channel to access to more opportunities to a broader community who can actually helping us to, because I think support is from a community is really needed, because without, like, I'm a community person myself, because without the support from all of my friends from the Girls Who Code Club, I wouldn't made my way towards the tech world. And it's another product like demo showing how the product itself is basically bringing up on a community of people worldwide without putting too much bias on the person itself. And I wanted this, I want to foster this community to be inclusive and allowing people to be able to mentoring and mentoring more people who don't really get those chance to access to the resources that we're seeing today. Because it's actually pretty shocking to me that there's a lot of people in the world that do not have access to ChatGPT today. Like, of course, like we think like it's a natural thing in our life, we use it every day, but those people in Southeast Asia or Latin America or East Europe, they might not have, those kind of resources that we have. So I think I'll just share that much about my, my journey of what made me today here. But I just really thanks everyone for listening to my story, and I hope like you can support whoever is in the themed like minority group through like whatever kind of way that is going to be helpful for them, whether it's offering like a free like like 15 minutes small like mentorship like session for those people who are on the other side of the world, or posting more education content or anything that offers them to be able to start basically a new world for them.
Any? Yeah. Do you have a minute for questions? Or are there questions? Cool. Oh, yeah.
When you were first starting out and building your community, how did you go about reaching these people, or how did you find your followers or your flock?
Yeah, so actually, I didn't do too much of the growth hacking when I first started. I was actually surprised by the result, because firstly, I was just posting about blogs about, how I feel about the overall like bias towards minorities in the tech community. And there's a lot of people start to reaching out to me to saying, hey, I have the same feeling. So I think initially it's more like word of mouth from a lot of people who feel like they don't have as much, access to a lot of resources, or people who feel like they are being like discriminated in some way.
Awesome. Oh, I can't, the poll is in the way, sorry. Here it comes. There you go.
It's a block.
It's a block, yeah.
Hi, my name is Lynn. And based off of what you were saying earlier about communities that do not have access, we found out here in this country that there are communities that do not have broadband, much less computers, and much less ChatGPT or Gemini or anything like that. Do you have any suggestions on getting, maybe even through government help, that type of thing out to everybody so that we could truly be inclusive in regards of education and bringing kids up? And this would also include their parents, because as you know, the family unit is instrumental in educating and supporting people. Do you think there's anything that our local or state or national government can do to help?
Yeah, I would say definitely, because a lot of kids in this, whether it's third world countries or, other countries who are not able to access many resources because of the government regulation. So kids in China don't have access to ChatGPT. They don't have access to OpenAI APIs. So I'm actually doubting, a lot of them don't actually know about ChatGPT. So they don't have access to those resources, not because they don't want to, purely because the government don't allow them to. Because I don't want to raise too much about the geopolitical stuff, but there's certain countries who don't want their AI IPs to be used freely on other countries. So I think if the government can eliminate the bias towards, which country will have access to what kind of technology that we have today, then of course we're gonna have a more inclusive community.
Hello. I love the idea behind this. And my question is about, you mentioned the developer economy from that perspective, but as a consultant, I've worked with companies that have people that have an idea, but they want to hire tech, but they don't even know what they're hiring, how to communicate that, what they should be looking for. And I was just curious to know if you had started thinking about or playing with developing that side of it to be more on the hiring side, to be able to take and translate what these people that maybe aren't technical but need a technical capacity, if you've started working with AI to translate their needs into a way that can help them hire someone. Because I know people right now that would love to engage people in this way, but they don't even know how to translate what it is that they're saying into something that they can actually take action on. So I was just curious to know what because I love this idea, if you started working on that.
That I haven't started to think of. I guess it's because like my personal bias towards helping more minorities to be able to access to like more opportunities through Aspecta in the first place. But I do believe that there will be, some startups that will be solving this problem, or even people can, I don't know, if it comes to an issue of, hiring, allowing AI to be able to understand whatever they are saying, then maybe we can, plug in some other models into the product to help people to do that.
I have a question. Great presentation and wonderful story. It's so inspiring to hear that people who have gone through so much still choose to reach out and lend a hand to help others. So bravo to you for that. You mentioned that some of the more prestigious schools that typically harbor the most nepotism and bias against people that are outside of their cultural norms. Have you ever considered perhaps reaching out to some of these institutions and perhaps getting their communities involved with our communities? Because we can do things like this and outbuild those people, perhaps 5 times out of 10. But what can we do to help bridge the gap between those two groups of people so that we can kind of reduce and bring these walls down a little bit and perhaps maybe create more of a conversation?
Yeah, so I was actually talking to first the tech student club at Berkeley, and the other I was actually talking to one of the professors at Stanford, just because I live in the Bay Area myself. It's closer to those two universities, and my conversation with Stanford professor is basically having him to offer more resources like education content that we can spread out to all those kids out there who may not be able to afford the $50 per month from Coursera, or whatever education platform is. And for the Berkeley group, that student club, we actually had a pretty good idea that we plan to do in the summer, basically allowing all those students who are interested to have a more like a mini mentor session with kids in Southeast Asia, so that they will have their own mentor peer during the summer, and so that they will be able to communicate on a weekly basis to share whatever to basically break the barrier between those two communities. And I know it's not very sustainable per se, but I really wish we can have a way to do this in a more scalable practice.
Oh, one more. Here. Love this be the last one.
Your presentation was just really great. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's really great. You mentioned Girls Who Code, and I run a nonprofit for inner city youth. And so one of the areas that we know the government is working as voices of innovation, and they do help to provide ISP internet service providers and things like that for free to inner city youth. And so one of the things I was thinking about as we look at maybe bringing Girls Who Code into inner city, because if they don't know it's there and available, they're not going to latch onto it because it's not made available readily available to them because they don't have the knowledge. And so when you started with Girls Who Code, I'm sure you were doing probably coding in JavaScript and some other languages, and you weren't, maybe even COBOL, which was leaving the room at that time, and doing some HTML and what have you. So at that point, as you finished, they started moving you into coding in the AI space. Is that what they're doing now? They're trying to stay ahead of the curve so that if we bring those students into Girls Who Code, we want to stay relevant.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll say Girls Who Code is a community which we are not just. Of course, we learn a lot of like coding lessons, but we're also bringing on all those like female like mentors from. We actually had a lot of mentors from Google back then, when I was in college 2 years ago, and to talk about how their experiences in their workplaces and preparing all the girls to get ready for the brutal world a little bit. Yeah, but I'll say the Girls Who Code, it's not a club that it's only running my college. It's actually a national branch of clubs, so we can definitely do that. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Jane. Thank you for coming. Thank you also to Aspecta for sending over our speaker gifts. They gave us some really nice Stanley mugs, so all of our speakers and volunteer organizers could have one of those. So quick plug, if you'd ever like to speak at one of these events, you might get a really nice gift. Well, you probably will because we always do that. All right, so next up, we are going to have our survey for the raffles. So if you want to take out your phones and snap our little QR code, we have a decent amount of prizes to give away. A lot of us were at Google Cloud Next last week, and so we went to all of the little booths and picked up their free crap. And we've put together some baggies, and they have some nice stuff in there. They're gonna be from companies you've never heard of, but I'm sure they're all using AI to do remarkable and wonderful things. So they say. No, I'm just kidding. They're awesome. Oh, this is neat. All right, so we've got 4 swag bags here. This is the neatest thing ever. It lights up. So if you have a small child, you might want one of these. We got one for our 8-year-old, and she loves it. Okay, so fill out the survey. Does everybody have the QR code snapped? Because once we do, we're going to have, while you're filling that out, we're going to take a moment to thank our sponsors. I'm looking to see if people are still pointing their phones at the screen. They are, so I'm gonna keep talking. Or, pretend to talk. Just kidding. Okay, what else do we have in here? Kubernetes backpack, 10 years of Kubernetes. We had this party on the 64th floor of this hotel in Las Vegas last week, and I snagged a couple of these. So we're giving them away today. We've also got this super cool bag from a company out of New Zealand. I'm not gonna read it to you, but you can read it. Right? Oh, that's fun, isn't it? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody pointing phones at screens anymore, so I'm going to advance the slide and say thank you to our sponsors today. Aspecta, like I said, thanks for sending over those nice speaker gifts. Women at Playa Vista, Women at Google, Gretel, and Target Close. And I believe somebody from Target Close wants to say a word or two. Oh, he's filling out a survey because he wants to win a prize. Here we go. Welcome, David. Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Bruno. I'm the general manager of Target Close, and we solve technology problems for marketers. We have an awesome team of software developers, QA engineers, and data analysts who build websites, landing pages, custom functionality, integrating with APIs, setting up analytics and conversion tracking, building business intelligence dashboards like Tableau, Power BI, and Looker Studio. So if you have any projects where you have any technology blockers or something is moving slower than you'd like, we'd like to help you implement that. So you can say hi to me, Marcia, or Mihoko in the back, and thank you for your time.
All right. Do I have to reverse the slide to get back to the wheel of names, or is there? Okay. Dun, dun. Perfect. All right. So we are going to give people 3 more minutes to fill out. So I'm going to start doing a little show and tell a little bit more from the bags, right? That sounds like fun. Show people what they could win or possibly not win. We have a Google Cloud Next water bottle. Is this the one with the sticker still in it? It is. There is a whole bunch of stickers in here. We're going to need to hold on to these, though. And this is actually mine. Yeah.
Well, we have other stickers outside.
Well, I'm glad I checked that. Man, I almost lost my 3D printed dinosaur. Now you almost got to take home my own personal 3D printed dinosaur. What do we got? Sunglasses from Strim. A wireless audio transmitter. Ooh, Bluetooth transmitter. If you want to watch TV late at night, you can plug that into your headphones and then also plug it into your TV and not bother your small child. Pen from Spin AI. Okay, that's it for that bag. I still see people messing with their phones, so I'm going to keep going. Oh. Yeah, thanks. Let's see, we've got some socks from Leah. Okay, so this is AI for lawyers. They're looking to put paralegals out of business. Not kidding, she totally admitted that to me. Google Cloud Innovators Notebook. Another one of these super cool Google Cloud Next water bottles. These are really nice with the handle and everything. You can hang that off a backpack. I'm still seeing people typing on phones, so I'm gonna keep going. Okay. Oh, this is fun. You're really, really, really gonna wanna win this. Look at this little android. Isn't that the cutest? So cute, so cute. And, oh, a t-shirt that says Data Dog. I hope it's the size of whoever wins it, or they have a friend who's that size. And, oh, okay, so this is an Informatica coffee mug, and it's got a couple Cockroach DB pin badges in it. Cockroach is a really cute logo. Okay, I am no longer seeing people typing on their phones. Does anyone need more time? Oh, okay, a little bit more time. Hey, good deal, because we have one more bag left to go through. All right, so again, one of these Google Cloud Next water bottles, and I think that's all for those because I think the fourth one we got, the person who got it wanted to keep it. Another Google Cloud Innovators notebook, and some super fun Google Cloud Innovators socks. Woohoo! I got some Women Tech Makers socks that totally match my outfit. All right, that's all. But this is a really nice backpack, so that makes up for the fewer things inside. All right. Is everybody having a good time? Okay. Did you enjoy yourselves at our event today? Is it worth it? Do you want to come back again in the future? Well, awesome. We would love to have you back. We have a lot more content coming up for you this spring and summer. We will have a Dev Fest this fall that we're putting together. What's that? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so this fall/winter, we're gonna do a Dev Fest, which will be a larger event. We'll probably have a couple different tracks, one called AI and one called Everything Else, but who cares? No, I'm just kidding. Some people care about things that aren't AI. All right, are we set? One more. Okay, let me think of another joke. Ask AI. Yes. Hey, Google, tell me a joke. Now, the only people who are going to win today are Jim and Emily, which is silly because Jim and Emily are the ones who put together the... oh, are we ready? Almost, okay. We've still got one more person filling out the survey. Okay. All right, all set? Okay, all right, very good. We're gonna do this again. That was a test one. Yeah, Jim doesn't get to win. No, and not to be mean, but because he's one of the ones who contributed to the swag and doesn't need any more stuff. We've been doing this a really long time. We have enough stuff, right? All right. Tina with so many A's. All right, Tina, I'm gonna let you pick, yeah? All right, we'll let you pick. Which swag bag did you have your eye on? Well, you can look through them. Okay. All right, should we do another one? All right, let's do the drum roll right up. Do it up this time. So much suspense. Renata. Renata, yay! Hey! All right, you gotta be done picking now. Somebody else is coming up. Thank you, Tina. Yeah, thank you, Renata. All right, 2 more. I'm gonna get this. Yeah, I'm really not gonna say this out loud on stage. Okay. Janelle. Yay, Janelle. You're welcome. Do you know which one you want? Yes, you want that one. Yeah. All right. Woohoo! Thank you for coming. Awesome. Last one. Still got some good stuff in here. This is the one with the Bluetooth transmitter. I've been using it. It's really nice. Okay, I can't pronounce that. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to tell me. Oh yeah.
Joking. I might be the next one.
You are.
You're so close to me, and I got it.
All right. Thank you so much for everyone who showed up today. Make sure you get some swag. Make sure you get some food. Make sure you make a new friend and come back to our next event. Thank you from our organizers, GDG Los Angeles, GDG Culver City, LA Android, Cal Poly Pomona. No, they're not the slide with our faces on it. Oh, well, in that case, I have been your host, Emily Anderson, Blue Shield of California Innovation Technologist, and we will see you all next time.